Hi, I'm Steve. This is going to be about the BMW E36 Fan Upgrade. The M3 is not here today, so just pretend we're looking at my M3. You open the hood, here's the radiator. On this side of the radiator is going to be the sensor that turns on your electric fan up front. The wiring comes from underneath the frame portion of the car over here. You're going to locate that sensor. You're going to unplug the connector from the sensor. You're going to back up 4 or 5 inches. This wiring harness is clamped underneath the metal part of the car. So undo a couple of those clamps so you've got some room to work with. So let's pretend you've got this much wire. Kind of find your midpoint from the connector to where it runs into the frame, and you're going to just cut all 3 wires off like that. Here's what happens when you cut the wires off. This is what's going to happen next. You need to have a soldering iron and know how to solder. Pretend this is the wiring harness from the car. This is the connector that goes onto the sensor in the radiator. You've got 3 wires. I don't remember the colors, or I would list the colors for you. But one of the wires is going to be a ground wire, which is definitely brown. The other 2 wires will be of different color. One will be low, one will be high fan speed. So like I just showed you, you back up a little bit so you've got room to work. You cut them in half, okay? So now they're cut open. What are you going to do? You're going to cut 6 pieces of wire. I've only got 3, so pretend with me here. And you're going to take 2 of each. I've already colored, I've done this before, so I've color coded. So pretend you've got 2 brown wires. You're going to take the 2 brown wires, twist them together, and connect it to the brown wire on the connector. All right? You're going to do the same thing with 2 more wires on the other 2 wires. Now, I decided to use red for high-speed fan and blue for low-speed fan. So how do you figure it out? It's really easy. Once you've made the cut, strip these 3 wires on your wiring harness side a little bit. Turn the key to on. The brown wire, which in this instance we're going to pretend this is brown, is always the ground. So touch this wire to the brown wire and listen for the fan. The fan will go on either high or low. Take the other wire, touch it to the brown, and listen to the fan. So for sake of example, let's assume that our fan ran on low when we touched this one, and our fan ran on high when we touched this one to the brown. And of course, this is our brown ground wire. Now, you've put 2 wires on each one of these wires here, okay? And so what you're going to want to do is, now that you know this wire is the high-speed fan, look at the color of it and realize that the same color of one of these 2 is its corresponding mate. All right? So what you're going to do is take 2 of your red wires, and I just picked red because I want that to represent high, because I ultimately know that I want it to be a high-speed fan instead of just the low. And we're going to have to reverse what was normally done here, because we want the high-speed fan to come on at the lower temperature. So this, whatever this color wire was, find its same color over here, but then take the other one and connect these guys together. So you're going to put 2 red wires on this one, which is going to ultimately end up being your low temperature. And of the two wires that are sticking off of here, and I happen to decide to use red, so I know that that means high. Of those two, you'll use one red wire in a minute, and this one you'll connect back to here. So that way, should this wire, which really is the same as this wire, get touched to the brown wire, that means your fan will run on high. You're going to do the same thing to the other wire here that's not the ground wire. And I decided to put two blue wires on here to signify low. So this is low speed. This is low speed because you tested it and you knew that. You heard the fan. One of the wires is going to go like that to put you back together again. And then the second wire that's sticking out will be used with our connectors. We'll get to that in a minute. And then of course the brown wire is the brown wire, and so you're going to have two brown wires connected here. One of them will connect back to the wiring harness, and the other brown wire, so pretend those are all put back together, and what you wind up having is an extra brown wire, an extra blue wire, and an extra red wire sticking off. Now, anytime you want to manually turn your fan on all the time, you just have to touch either low or high to the brown. In my case, in the summer, I run the car with no clutch fan, and I run the low all the time. So what that would look like is, here's my low, here's brown, and I've got these connectors on these two wires that I can plug together. They're just 1/4 inch spade connectors. Here's what they look like without covers on them. They basically just plug in like that, a male, and a female. I tend to really like the kind that are totally covered. Here's the female, here's the male, and they plug together. So what I typically do is I put a female on the brown wire, and then I take a male and put it on the low and the male on the high, and that way if I ever want my fan to run on high all the time, I plug those two together. If I want my fan to run on low all the time, I plug those two together. You can read the write-up to see what I actually do in a high humidity area here in Cincinnati, Ohio. If you're going to be using solderless crimp connectors, you really should invest the 20 bucks or so on eBay or anywhere else for that matter, Home Depot, and get one of these compression tools that crushes the connector. It does such a great job. The color codes are for the gauge or the thickness of wire, how big the wire is. Yellow is the bigger wire, 12 and 14 gauge. Blue is typically 16, 18, and then smaller than that is the red. And depending on how the wire fits in there, you'll know. Most everything on a car is going to take a blue connector unless you're dealing with starters or fuel pumps where they draw a lot of current. So you can see how small, how thin this wire would be relative to how thick this guy is. So that's what you need for connectors. Here's how you put them on. That should get you in good shape. If you know you're going to never ever run the fan on high all the time, you don't need to do the extra wire for the high speed side. So then what you'd end up having is an extra wire on the brown one and an extra wire on the low speed side, whatever that turns out to be. Enjoy.